Hello and welcome back to Crew Parley. Normally on this channel we do Parley, my on-the-spot responses to the prompts you folks submit, and this is the opposite. It's a prompt that I select and then you all respond, and I respond to the responses. This one was inspired by Just Rusty when I asked you all to submit Crew Parley prompts, though. It's about algorithmic slop. We'll unpack the term slop a little later in this Parley, but Just Rusty explains what slop is your algorithm currently serving you. What's something that you're currently getting recommended over and over by whatever social feed you use, YouTube, Insta, that you wish it would stop. And then I added a few examples of the type of thing you're being shown, how perhaps this happened, and your little slice of frustration for what you're getting would all be good to hear. I'd also be interested to hear if this has gone well for anyone somehow. I personally feel that I've gotten YouTube to recommend me a very specific and kind of hard to describe type of video, so success stories would be interesting too. Looking forward to your responses. Yeah, this is an interesting one for me in particular because I don't use any social media other than YouTube, if you agree that YouTube is social media, and I don't use YouTube in a very social media-y way. I almost always use either curated playlists or not really scrolling. I actually didn't even know until recently that in YouTube Shorts, if you swipe, you get another short. From my perspective, I don't see why anyone would ever want to do this. That's not, I want to watch videos that I choose. Even if the algorithm guides some selection there and I don't see an endless waterfall of randomness, like I would never want like a totally unknown random video. That's just depressing. But I know for a lot of people it's a habit, and I don't mean to shame that. I'm just saying I honestly don't actually even know that much about this, which I think is wonderful, and therefore I'm looking forward to people's horror stories. And also, you know, in theory it could be sort of nice. Obviously nobody likes gachapon. Gambling, predatory microtransactions are bad, but if it was free, didn't have some negative habit or addiction element, and you had it compartmentalized to not take up too much of your time, having a somewhat curated, somewhat targeted series of things based on what you've enjoyed before would be good in some ways, or would at least have some upsides. And I think if you use YouTube in a very specific way, that is possible. It strikes me as something that for a lot of people, you probably experience more of the negative part, but are also the types of people to experience the positive part. So I've been very excited for this one. I really don't know what to expect. I tried to do kind of minimum show notes for this one because significantly, this is about phenomena that I don't know about and haven't experienced. So it's fun to just discover as we go. Parley is supposed to be my on-the-spot responses to the prompts you folks submit, and often it's helpful to do like a very, very small, maybe 5 minutes of just like show notes, like podcast notes, or prep quickly looking something up. But in this case, I feel like for the most part, it's better to just go. So I skimmed the responses to make sure I know what I'm in for, but otherwise we're just gonna get in there. We're going in hard. Take me out to dinner first. Just Rusty, yes, you're the one who was excited about this. Let's see what you got. You said, it's not what I'm currently being served, but I think it's very funny that my partner is consistently given reels with songs by the same band as the background, but he listens to everything with the sound off. As someone who tends to keep sound on from my phone, I just end up listening to a lot of Scar played over the top of funny jokes reposted from Tumblr. Okay, I'll stop you right there. What are reels? Yeah. YouTube Reels. Series of shorts, is that what it is? How to create a reel on YouTube? Oh, reels are what they call them on Instagram. Okay. Anyway, interesting. Yeah. So a culture on YouTube that I definitely am part of is listening to videos or watching videos without the audio on. So a thing that happens on YouTube that I think a lot of people know now, but I've been using for a very long time, is if I want to watch a video on my phone, which I rarely do, I don't have ad blocks set up on my phone. It's harder to do that than it is on a PC. Power users of phones, yes, it is. Don't be pedantic. It is not as straightforward as doing it on a computer. Just because you think it's easy doesn't mean it is trivially easy. I would like it set up on my phone, but I haven't bitten that bullet yet and paid that upfront cost. So I don't want to watch a video on YouTube because ads are always predatory and pointless to me. So I don't want to watch that way. But sometimes I want to see what a video is before, like, what I usually do is save it to a watch later playlist or something. And what I do when I want to do that is I pause over the video and just keep it focused in the center of the screen, and then YouTube will begin playing it. But in this particular context, it doesn't play the audio on, well, they added a feature where you can turn that on, but it by default doesn't play the audio, I believe. And you don't see ads. And so, it's just part of the feed. Like the videos start playing as you see them. And then the idea is that the audience will want to click into them. But I often don't. I have watched whole videos that way at times, especially when they're not that long. And you can actually still use the track thing, the playhead. You can still move it around in the video. And so that's a good way to kind of scout out if it's something relevant at all when, the title and thumbnail are generally not enough for you to know that, because most people are not optimizing for those to be useful information for humans. So they're just clickbait, and then it's hard to tell what the video is. It is then funny sometimes when the point of a video is that you can hear the audio, like in general, or that was the intention, but you watch it in a way where you don't hear the audio. And then YouTube's, auto captions are like usable, fine, coherent some of the time. And so you can still kind of understand what's going on. I therefore can totally relate to like listening to a song, but without like the audio on. Which, I would say this with affection. It doesn't make that much sense. I hope we can agree. But at times, for whatever reason, I've been called to do that for a short period of time. So, I think that's quite funny. It sounds like what you're saying is your partner's phone hears music, maybe from you, and then that ends up in their algorithm on YouTube. And then they end up seeing that, but they, don't actually have the sound on. And so they're kind of listening to the same music as you automatically, but without the audio part of the music, like just the lyrics. I'm not sure if I've understood that correctly, but a very bizarre. YouTube is so weird now. Anyway, that's delightful and a little bit relatable to me. Continuing on, my most recent YouTube algorithm success, there actually are going to be some of these, delightful, has been realizing I can access university lectures for free. Yeah, say it louder. As a lot of unis will just put them up free of charge. Ended up watching a writing course and currently watching a course about the philosopher W.E.B. Du Bois. Lectures just turn up in my feed now, as a 9-part series of hour-long lectures is exactly the kind of content which will keep you on platform, and that you've demonstrated you like to watch. I reckon you, as I was saying with myself before, are probably a slightly more consistent than average viewer as well, and so therefore YouTube is detecting that pretty easily, and this is a type of content that creates a huge amount of watch time, and YouTube uses this partly as data, so it's almost as if you watched like way more videos worth of thing. This is, by the way, why there are YouTube channels that are successful, even though they only put up like a 2-hour-long mega video essay every like 6 months or something, because watch time matters basically as much, if not more, than views, and subscribers barely do anything now. And therefore, a video that racks up a huge amount of watch time is valuable, often in many ways more valuable, because if you get 2 hours of watch time from one video instead of 5, it's counted similarly, but you only needed 1 slot in discoverability for that video to come up. If people click on the video, to think of it another way, that's worth sort of 5 times as many views of videos that would be a fifth as long. And so it's a very, very effective strategy in a high competition platform. It's only going to get more effective from here on out as well. And something I will be dipping my toes into before jumping in face first, just getting used to the water in my own career. So yeah, cool. Yep, I've absolutely also dipped into this a little as well. I wonder what the deal is with the universities putting up the lectures for free. I guess it's a way to help students go back to them. Like this is very useful. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just thinking about what the value proposition is. I guess for a lot of universities, the questionable value proposition is that going here in person, you get a personal touch, and you get the degree, and that's considered to be valuable. I'm not sure how valuable it really is anymore in some cases, but stay in school, or at least keep learning, please. I'm sure I don't need to tell most of you that, but it's interesting to see how prevalent that is. I too have kind of gotten back into writing, creative writing a little bit, and since kind of studying that in college, and it's been interesting to see the lecture materials available for free about that subject. I'm not sure all of them are all that helpful. It's one of those subjects where, like, I think the meaningful way to learn it doesn't involve much being given information, and instead is more about having people to read and edit and iterate your work while you read and edit and iterate theirs. I think the most valuable thing I learned when I was in school for creative writing, that's a thing you can do. I know that might seem ridiculous, but hey, the degree is an English degree. It gets you all sorts of jobs in theory that I've never gotten with it. You know, editing other people's work is by far the most I ever learned from really anything in school, actually, let alone English or creative writing. That's very valuable. And I mean, like, my friends and I just do that sometimes. I don't know. So in a way, you could argue it's that the idea of what you're paying for when you go to a university is already a little iffy. And so sure, you know, the lecture can just be up for free, but it's a pretty incredible resource. And there's some good projects nowadays that are trying to create free series of lectures as well, like intended to be free. They're not, you don't pay for them anywhere. They're just up for free. And so that's wonderful. One of the best things about the modern internet. Just Rusty continues, my algorithmic failures, all right, we're right back down to earth, have been Warhammer content. Okay. I watched one video about how the build system in Space Marine 2 works for that co-op portion of the game, and now my feed is inundated with what can best be described as lore slop. Ah yes, lore slop, one of the better flavors of slop, really. The problem is that some of them are worth watching, as the Warhammer universe is occasionally interesting, but a lot of the content isn't, and the majority of people telling you about the content are either only really interested in a level of detail and specificity about canonic events, or are reading what often feels like it could be an AI script. The recommendation algorithm can't seem to tell the difference enough to feed me what I want in this genre, unfortunately. And I might be a little outside the scope of this parlay, but what are we even doing here, you know? I do think it's worth considering how there are types of videos that the algorithm will inherently be less good at recommending, you know, more targeted. One example is videos where they attract some portion of their audience is people with maybe kind of low standards or a pretty bad motivation for watching that video. Anything that is like an in community and it's like factoids or trivia about the in community is going to attract partly an audience that just wants to be technically correct or like feel like they know more than other people and therefore gain some shallow sense of validation. And these people just don't have extremely high standards most of the time. Like, they put up with things to feel better than other people. And so it's going to lead to the videos that they watch being treated as all the same thing, kind of regardless of a certain level of quality. There's also kind of begs the question in a lot of these videos. I mean, why? I don't know. There's this really interesting idea of it's an interesting story to read a wiki about. I've definitely experienced this before. But in some ways, it's not gonna be enjoyable as a coherent story. I think for a lot of people, it's just that they played through, I don't know, Elden Ring, just to give another example. Elden Ring tells its story, I think, just poorly. But a lot of people will make the excuse for it, and there's an argument for this, that, you know, it is just atmospheric storytelling that you have to dig for very extensively, and also the game doesn't have basic details of what the effects in the game do inside of it, and I think that's just bad communication. But a lot of people feel that that is good, and just you need to expend a huge amount of effort to get a story that is, you know, interesting but straightforward enough. Like, I think it would be better if it was just told more directly. And don't get me wrong, I think you can follow the basic plot of Elden Ring without doing this, but the point I'm trying to make is that that creates another incentive, which is people want to watch the videos. They kind of don't in a way, but it's like you really want to know what that was all about, and therefore it's a relief to watch a lore video, but that's not the same thing as actually wanting to watch one, right? A lot of people clicking on that will go, okay, and then they're kind of done, but the YouTube algorithm often doesn't distinguish between that phenomenon and like liking a video, if you will. So that's also a case where, yeah, these lore videos are often actually pretty good, or like a high quality experience on paper, but in practice will be recommended way more than it actually makes sense for most people to actually watch them. And it makes sense why YouTube makes that mistake. Go figure. I also had the same thing with Elden Ring, can you tell? So anyway, very interesting. I do think that the lore slop, we said we'd unpack the term slop a little bit, And I think one of the things to unpack is whether it is slop a lot of the time. The idea is that they're in a society where you're really rushed. You often don't feel like you have time to pick a curated or better experience, and therefore it's just what's put in front of you. The slop bowl food trend, for example, where you just get there's a ton of restaurants popping up nowadays that are startups that just serve like a bowl of the grub, and it's fine. Like, food in the format of a bowl is not inherently bad. At the same time, a lot of them are sort of, how valuable really is this? But you get a vaguely coherent mix of macronutrients, but they're really expensive. And so, sure, it kind of feels like, well, shuffle on to the next station where you eat your bowl of slop. I get that feeling. At the same time, I feel like the weird thing about modern society is that a lot of the things being labeled as slop are actually of modest quality, especially compared to what we had historically. And it's just that they're very directionless. Like, why this specifically is maybe a helpfuler way to think about slop as an idea. It's debatable. I also think slop is used at least two distinct ways, one of which is the thing is just bad, and another of which is there is so much of this being produced. Not necessarily that it's so bad, but just that it's very mass produced. And I think it's worth considering those two definitions. I do think the lore slop phenomenon is one of the most interesting flavors of slop. And it's interesting, I hope you'll agree, how the algorithm kind of doesn't work as well with that type of content. A lot of the people watching it either have not much of a standard for it. They kind of just want to know all the things to feel like they know more than other people. Or they do want to watch one video about that, but it's not really the same as them wanting that type of video. They just sort of want the utility. Just like how a video on how to fix something on your computer will get a lot of views, but isn't necessarily going to lead to you watching more of that kind of video. You fixed it hopefully in many cases. So, very interesting start. And I'm delighted to see somebody mention a positive success story as well. Mr. Fruit, for the past year, I've been trying to understand the strange world of professional wrestling. And because of that, I've been getting a fair chunk of wrestling content recommended to me. I had to entirely block recommendations from the official channels because the titles of the clips from the latest episode of WWE Raw or AEW Dynamite or whatever contain major spoilers that got fed to me days before I can watch the episodes through official channels in Germany, where True Parley Grandmaster Fruit lives. Then there is a mountain of episode recap content that is essentially slop. Remember our definitions before. And then there are slop, again, definitions before, video essays about why wrestling sucks right now. And to be fair, WWE is pretty much unwatchable right now. Okay. This is a ride, Mr. Fruit. But to my knowledge, this content has existed in this form for the better part of 2 decades. If it's so bad, why keep watching it? It's pure rage/engagement bait. There is actually good and interesting wrestling content, but the majority is horrible slop. Usually I can filter the slop. My recommendations are really good for the most part. But in this case, it doesn't seem to work, and I keep getting recommendations for bad videos. It's almost like I planned these out. No, this one actually happened organically. This just happens to be after Just Rusty's comment. But it's related, right? There's something happening, and the recommendations here are worse in some way, even though you report that you have generally good recommendations. But something about the nature of the content, when you break down the psychology behind people clicking on videos in a certain way, and YouTube's algorithms build profiles for those ways people click on videos, is not working to deliver good things. Because of the subject matter and how people interact with it in some way. We just have to figure out how, and then maybe we won't be able to fix it, but we'll know that that was going to happen. And it will get to the point where a type of video will be predictably bad in the algorithm. If you click on this type of video, you are going to get bad recommendations because it just kind of doesn't work the way the algorithm is currently handling it. We won't be talking about it in this video, but it is worth considering that YouTube's algorithm could potentially innovate to improve in these ways. It's like how when a generative large language model or like image generating AI first came about, it had a lot of weird bugs. Like we had the thing about numbers of fingers on each hand, and there's a pretty interesting kind of mathematical statistical reason why that was a problem. But people got very fixated on the now, as they always do, I guess. that means generative AI will never do this thing. I mean, of course it won't never do that. The people will just invent a way to fix that. And now that is a pretty minor issue after only a few years. Geez, it feels like it's been several decades. Anyway. And it's possible that will happen with YouTube's algorithms too. A lot of the things we're saying, I already have kind of the basic understanding in my head of, well, couldn't you just do this to the algorithm and then it would handle for that? But anyway. Yeah, okay, so we maybe we won't get into that here, but I think this is an interesting one. So one thing you've located is the WWE rage bait type of content or engagement bait type of content. I do think it's true that when something is drama related, of course, people are going to follow the drama more. And again, often people who are interested in this type of content don't draw a distinction between that and actual analysis, or they see that as less interesting instead, when I feel it is almost objectively more, if not interesting, just more. And so, yeah, that's going to create a sort of confusion where YouTube will align those two things, even though there is a very obvious, even to the people that don't draw a distinction, there's a pretty obvious difference between those types of content, but YouTube is going to treat them as a similar thing. Another thing to consider is that a lot of people that get interested in this type of legacy, it bridges the gap between past and modern culture in humanity. I would say wrestling is one that is like this. It is, has a reasonably long history, but is also something that is, doing its thing in the modern day and adapting to social media as well. Those types of entertainment often have a legacy audience that's been involved in them for decades. People that are interested in discovering new things generally just don't do anything for decades, or they're not going to be looking up rage bait about it for decades. But there is especially an older human audience that is very fixated on doing that. They don't move on to a new thing, and therefore they're going to watch whatever is presented. It's sort of like there's several different types of Call of Duty player, you might say. There's people that will try one or two of the games and sort of know about them peripherally, but that's kind of it. That would be me. There's people that play a lot of them, or they played an arc of the lifespan of the games, but then it sort of moved away from what they wanted and they stopped. And there's people who play like every single Call of Duty game. They like Call of Duty. Like they don't, that doesn't really exist. They just are in a comfort zone. That's different, but still reasonable. And therefore, if it shifts, they're going to create easy for me to say, algorithmic data that looks like they're all the same, even though the two other groups, I mean, I just made up a few groups, the other people watching that type of video draw a very clear distinction. It's very easy for most humans to tell the difference between them. And even the people who don't avoid playing any of them, who just treat them all as the same, the way they play them, still know the difference between like Infinite Warfare and Call of Duty, Black Ops 4 or whatever. It's not hard to tell the difference between them, even for the people that don't do much to indicate that they feel that they're different. Their enthusiasm for them is not in their actions that different. They still very clearly know that there's a difference between them, but the way they engage with them creates a pattern that the algorithm doesn't see as a difference. It sees them as, okay, those are the same, basically. And a lot of the time people on YouTube, of course, a huge phenomenon driving these factors is a lot of people who don't like these kinds of videos are spending some of their time looking for videos, just something to watch. And if Call of Duty is in their peripheral, then they might think, oh, well, I would be interested to see a little of what this Call of Duty game I don't know about would be like. And then they click that and reinforce the pattern to YouTube that all the games are the same, and they represent a single profile that should be recommended to people in general. I suspect something like this is why you see entertainment that has this mix of types of engagement get such poor quality recommendations for most of the types of people that are interested in it. And the other types of people interested in it would be interested no matter what was recommended about it. If it says WWE, they're clicking on it, fine. But the point is, I think YouTube tends to align toward that type of pattern. You could therefore fix this by finding some way to get YouTube to elide toward the most demanding audience member rather than the least demanding audience member. And this would create recommendations that are better for everybody, because YouTube would still very easily detect a separate profile that is the people that want to watch those nice videos about wrestling, and also people who want to watch like every video about wrestling. This would be easy to distinguish from a data perspective, I suspect, but YouTube just currently isn't set up that way as far as I can tell, and I think this phenomenon you're describing is an artifact of that happening. Wow, I didn't mean to act like I didn't have any thoughts about this subject when I said we'll just discover what happens. I have a lot of thoughts about like the way the algorithm behaves and how it interacts with human dynamics and culture. I just haven't experienced a lot of those things. So anyway, I will maybe give an example if we have time, but cool, very interesting example. To me, sorry to hear that's happening to you. Sorry, it is very interesting to me. I think this is a great example. But I'm sorry that sucks. And the spoilers thing is also like that's annoying. And it's also not very effective to tell YouTube not to send you videos about the subject. I know a lot of people have already experienced this, but YouTube often doesn't hold on to your stated preference to not send you more of that or this type of video indefinitely. Let's just say, YouTube, do you? Do you, YouTube? You don't always keep not recommending those channels, do you? So that's interesting, and does, I think, feed into this problem as well, where to an extent there's an engagement to blocking a type of channel. I wouldn't be surprised if secretly, or maybe even unbeknownst to YouTube staff, in the back end, the algorithm actually does track you saying you don't want to see a channel as a form of engagement. That might not even be a bad idea, depending on how that data is used. Anyway, go figure. On an unrelated note, Mr. Fruit, sure, I've been trying the Unhook browser extensions that allow you to disable parts of the YouTube website. I started by removing annoying things like shorts and mixes. Recently, I've disabled the sidebar video recommendations, and that has made my relationship with the site a little healthier. Maybe it will help someone here to curate their YouTube experience as well. This is a very good direction to approach the problem from. You can approach it from the direction of simply not categorically, elementally not wanting to click on those things. That is possible, but as somebody who did do it that way, expending effort that way, willpower is for losers is the thought tool that I use. It is better to simply delete those things. I would argue that is the more sensible approach, just that you could, and I know some people are trying to do it the other way. I don't think there's anything better about this. I probably should have just looked up the ways to disable the parts I didn't want to see first. I'm just the person who was already so resistant to YouTube's little hooks that it wasn't a huge deal. But this is something worth recommending for sure. I think that it can also be fun to do things like make a playlist with your friends. I was mentioning before that you curate videos for them. When you watch a video you think they'd like, you put it in their playlist as well. And then people can browse, but they have the option of browsing a higher quality feed that creates immediate social connections, because we both saw this video now. And for me, this has been very effective with one of my friends. That worked very well for them. And I have another friend where we do this. It didn't like detox them necessarily. It's interesting, yeah. Certainly, I think the other thing about YouTube is that the reason that people are, understandably, I have felt this too, looking for entertainment to watch is because it feels like connections, meaningful entertainment to watch that is coherent to them without further effort, is exhausting. That's hard to do. And it is possible to take the approach of not trying to resist the algorithm, not trying to delete the algorithm, but instead making your own better source of recommendations. And then the barrier to entry to play a new video game or watch a new show is just lower than picking some random YouTube video with ads on it. Or at least lower than it would otherwise be. Maybe not literally lower. So that is an approach as well. Same sentiment as you, Mr. Food. I just want people to have every tool they can. Something we could talk about more in the future if people are interested. I have, let's say, a lot of experience with this myself and with some people in my life. iPatch Notes, a very different approach. I pay for YouTube Premium because I use a decent amount of the listed benefits, and I was sick of the arms race YouTube-like mobile apps had to compete in. There was a stint where I would hop app to app because something broke after Google updated something. Now I pay the tax not to worry about it. All this is a preface to say I'm getting a fairly first-party experience with YouTube, not through the lens of a copycat or additional extensions. Naturally, I'm very strict with my watch history. I think the type of person who has YouTube Premium and is very strict with their watch history is uncommon. Often paying for the convenience means they're not going to micromanage anything else. This is pretty interesting. I will actively delete, iPatchNet says, anything I did not like or did not enjoy, knowing that my history is a factor in what I get recommended. I do this choose sometimes. It would be interesting to try doing it way more. That's cool. After years of doing this, I can say I am relatively consistently shown things that I have a direct or adjacent interest in. This includes engineering, machining, 3D printing, game design, game retrospectives, anime music, etc. Zooming in on that last one, I do not watch modern anime. Mostly a compromise between my poor eyesight, eye patch notes, quadruple vision, and refusal to give something my undivided attention. Emphasis on undivided. It is current year, and I got games and conversations to have. Sitting relatively stationary with words I squint to read in a spoken language I do not understand does not fit my priorities. The first sentence must have been a typo or something, but I get the sentiment you're saying. You can't multitask because you don't speak Japanese, and if you watch anime with subtitles and that's what you prefer, then you would have to read the subtitles, yes. Occasionally, I will throw up an English dub if it does not make me want to die. There it is. But you can bet I have a rewind. I have to rewind certain segments if I miss something. Technically, this is also a problem with anime in Nihongo, Japanese. That's what Japanese in Japanese. Nihongo. Nihon is Japan, and go is like a language, a manner of speech. Nihongo. Just much worse because my struggling eyes are glued to the bottom third of the screen. Tying this back into algorithms, this is sort of the only way I can acquire first-party anime music from Toho or Kadokawa or whatever, without subjecting myself to, here's every opening and ending from this anime season. No thank you to that. I take specific care to only grab first-party videos, so my feed is not inundated with different creators regurgitating the same content with pitch changes or other copyright dodging techniques. Assuming some third-party edits stick around, they can get whacked anyway. Interesting. Even here, there are some recommended videos that I do not like musically and am unfamiliar with the source material. However, the animation or motifs used grab my attention and get special treatment. Black Summoner's opening, Dead End in My Brain, hell yeah, I have no idea what that is, but that's an edgy title, has steadily grown on me over the course of months because I remembered the animation and threw up the song on occasion. Now it has a prominent place in one of my commute playlists because I like the message and wordplay. Another is, and let me check here, The Banished Former Lives as He Pleases. The Banished Former Hero lives as he pleases, ending Meritocracy. Mostly since I like puppet string imagery. Concerns about objectification aside, having the cast as standalone dioramas is an interesting way to market them. Do I have experience with these franchises beyond these music videos? Not at all, but I am happy to have left my recommendations on after pruning them just so. Interesting. So the main thrust of this point, I wanted to read all of it because it's an interesting look into an approach to leaving all of first-party YouTube on, basically, and then just like, how would you manipulate it? I do less manipulation than this. I do all these things, but I don't do as much of any of them, I think. I tell YouTube not to recommend this channel, not to recommend this video. I delete things from my search history, just not that often. I curate multiple playlists, and these are all things that YouTube uses to tune its algorithm, and therefore I get pretty high quality, pretty targeted recommendations. But there are some of them that I haven't totally noticed because I haven't gone quite this far with it. And of course, I do still use YouTube a lot less because not having YouTube Premium and not tolerating ads on my phone, I just don't watch like as much YouTube. Indeed, it's interesting to look at the topic we talked about before with like people who are watching the wrestling videos or the lore slop videos. You mentioned how the first party videos from like anime producers or anime publishers, your Crunchyroll YouTube channel or whatever, boo. But anyway, your Crunchyroll YouTube channel will have like the opening to a show this season, and you can see the opening in good quality and the music of the song of the opening. And this is a marketing thing, sure. This is a big part of anime culture. It's kind of a mix of an ad and a cool part of the show and a part of the atmosphere of the show. And we've talked about anime openings in previous Parley. It's a surprisingly complex and interesting topic. They're a bizarre thing that doesn't happen in the same way in other media. It's not just a stinger. This is a 1.5 minute half music video plus tiny animated movie short. It's a bizarre phenomenon, and so naturally they make decent marketing videos, as we've talked about. It's interesting to engage with shows kinda only for their opening. And I do personally think the divide between show is good, opening is bad, and opening is good, show is kind of bad is fascinating. Like, I feel like there aren't that many shows where they're both that good. Might be something there. Anyway, a future parlay perhaps. But it's interesting to hear you say that you feel like you've gotten the algorithm to recommend you only the first party versions. And I see what you mean. It's beneficial to do this because third party ones are going to repeat themselves. First party ones probably mostly won't. The anime is being published in, the Western market by Crunchyroll, and so there's going to be exactly one video like that. Whereas, anime music videos created by fans, it'll be all over the place. Sure. Pretty interesting. It's interesting to consider that there is therefore probably, from YouTube's perspective, a profile that exists that is the people that watch only the first party videos. It's like a meaningful block, apparently, we might infer. Maybe it isn't, maybe it is. And there's also another separate block that is anime music videos, like watching often the same stuff, but made into anime music videos, more. Sure. And I think that would attract distinct audiences. Though I would imagine that a lot of them aren't doing it for the reason you are. That's interesting. As an aside, you mentioned, it's kind of outside the topic of the parlay, but you mentioned not watching much modern anime or like watching much anime at all because you want to watch it subbed and you can't give it your undivided attention, or you don't want to give it your undivided attention, and you can't give it your divided attention because you'd have to read the subtitles. I actually watch modern anime significantly to force myself to give something my undivided attention because I just think it makes my life better. I completely relate to, I think all of the same things as you, but my reaction is to metagame my thoughts a little bit and force myself to just do it as a way to decompress or enter a lower phase of energy in my day. It's something that may be enjoyable to do if you're game to do it that way. But I admit I often have to kind of force myself to initially, and then I have a very good time. I have pretty high quality recommendations for shows, somewhat thanks to all of you. So it's something I can relate to a lot, but which I react to differently. And I also quite, I guess, religiously do not watch dubs. We've talked about that previously. It is a complicated subject to me. It's not only that I think the English dub voice director is just voice directing the voice actors to be literally less mature than the Japanese voice director. It's not only that Japanese culture has different tropes and stereotypes in vocal performances. It's not only that I think the translation is often just better. It's not only that I speak intermediate Japanese. It's not only that I think a lot of the dialogue can be somewhat cringe and language barriers are a sort of shield against that. That's a little weird. Maybe we should unpack that. That's a different parlay. But it is all of those reasons put together that I know many of which you share, and therefore creates a situation where, yeah, I definitely wouldn't be watching it while doing anything else. And therefore I would have to want to set aside time to be in a lower energy phase. I've said in a recent previous parlay that I think the turn your brain off sentiment, this isn't really real, according to me. What people mean is to de-escalate the amount of mental energy they're putting into things. And this can be valuable to do. It can be healthy to resist the urge to do things. That is a muscle you can work out, and it can be applied just like strength training for your arms. Sure. But just like strength training for your arms, it's also reasonable to not do it as well. You could, if you don't use it and you lose it, then okay. But it is interesting to consider how for a lot of people, that's not the relationship they have to these shows. They maybe are currently enjoying entertainment that is often relatively lower mental energy, such that it really does feel like they're not thinking about anything when they watch the show. But like from a neurological perspective, they are. It's just maybe slightly less. And so perhaps, iPatch notes, you and I as fellow high energy entertainment enjoyers, this is not a better thing. High energy doesn't mean better, but it's just a thing we enjoy at times. Multitasking and pretty involved games and gameplay in them. Maybe anime is a big jump down from that. I can definitely relate to that feeling. Anyway, kind of outside this parlay, but I just thought that was interesting. And it's not unrelated. Obviously, people's mental energy phases or whatever is a pretty abstract thing to track in the algorithm, right? And so if a type of entertainment requires an understanding of that to be appreciably coherently recommended, again, we're going to get into the world of kind of weaker algorithmic recommendations, I would imagine. Pretty interesting. Yeah, it is also interesting to consider this strictness with watch history. Like, I would imagine some people hearing this will go, I want to do one of these things. And we've given you the materials for a few of them. Mr. Foot recommending Unhook, a browser extension to disable parts of the YouTube website, something I have dabbled with myself and highly recommend, but didn't personally use to tackle this problem. Fantastic recommendation. There's also the option to improve your ability to get recommendations for other media, and this will just drive you away from YouTube by making those experiences easier. Get a lot of books or good book recommendations, or a lot of games or game recommendations that you enjoy, and it'll be really easy to just click one and go, and you won't even get any ads or anything with them. For a lot of people, that would be a possible solution. And I also think it's a really interesting third solution to attempt to kind of manually tune the algorithm. We don't know to what extent YouTube truly gives up on something just because you say give up on this for my algorithmic recommendations, but it definitely seems to do something. I would anecdotally agree with you. It does seem to have some effect on a basic level. If you tell YouTube not to recommend a channel, for some amount of time, they don't recommend it. So, you know, that at least does something. On a basic level, that definitely does like work to an extent. And so then deleting things in your history, you know, a similar deal. One could imagine that this will have some effect on the algorithm. And again, anecdotally, I would agree that it seems to. So what to do? Is there a process worth recommending? I'm not sure that I can really enumerate one as much as it would just be my values that is leading me to where I am. It's that a lot of videos, if just looking at the video, I wonder, why does this exist? What would I gain from this? Much of the time the answer is, well, nothing, so I'm just not going to watch it. Or, you know, I'm not sure if I want the thing, but I'm along for the ride. I also really like videos where the creator says things about this at the beginning of the video. I recently watched a video from a channel I have very complex feelings about. I find annoying. This is one of the channels that I kind of track as a sort of part of my work. I like to keep an eye on people doing kind of weird things with YouTube. This channel is, I will just tell you, is Kleric, Kleric. This is a Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom creator. This creator has a recent video about how to make a really good hover vehicle in Tears of the Kingdom. If you're familiar at all with Tears of the Kingdom, you can build vehicles, and there's a very popular one where you just put a fan at an angle, a steering stick, and a fan at an angle. A hover bike, as the community's called it. A very famous and widespread and extremely easy to build very early in the game vehicle that is very efficient and has very good steering to let you fly places. This vehicle that Kleric offers in this video is in many ways an upgrade. It has much better efficiency, that is, it will travel more distance per battery unit of charge. It's only a little bit slower. It has really good maneuverability. You can use it to attack stuff. I don't know, if you play this game and you're interested in that, go check out the video. But the thing is, the video is like 25 minutes long, and that's because making this device requires shall we say, specific courses of action, okay? It requires ludicrously specific actions that are very, very difficult to synchronize between players. And I mean, you can give people a code that they can add into their game to just get it on the Switch 2, and he did do that. But there's also the instructions to build it. And as he well puts in the game, in the video, gamers, it's time to build. Come on, I want to know how to make it. And I think watching that video is an example of one where it's so specific. It is a type of video I often really like, where algorithmically there's even a phrase for this, algorithmically incoherent. Like, it's a tutorial video for this thing. It's not completely algorithmically incoherent, but that type of video where it's like, why are we here just to suffer? Or I have another video in mind that's like, how many Mario games are there? I promise this is actually an interesting question. Is this going to be the trivia style videos? It's like a video essay, but it's sort of not. And then it's kind of like a just list video, but then it's sort of not. And it's kind of an existential exercise in insanity, but it is that though. And these videos, I find, often lead to good recommendations because they do not lead to a ton of very rote recommendations. In my experience, anyway. Your mileage may vary. I did definitely watch one too many Tears of the Kingdom videos, a game I kind of vicariously experienced. I haven't actually played that much Tears of the Kingdom, and therefore my algorithm started spamming me completely irrelevant, totally unrelated Tears of the Kingdom videos. I seem to have crossed the threshold where that started to happen. And I can imagine how maybe that occurred. And so if I unlist or remove those videos from my history, maybe that will get rid of them. That would be nice. I will try that and see what happens. But the reason I mention it is that I think a lot of the time watching the video with an intention to discover something bizarre, it does something to the algorithm. When you don't as consistently watch the exact same type of video and instead watch very seemingly unrelated types of videos, that does seem to be part of it. Just a lot of existing humans just don't have that diverse interests. And to an extent, it's a matter of privilege to even be able to have diverse interests. I do just want to say that if you explore them, I feel like this has had some positive effect. So I don't know enough about why that would be, but one might infer that statistically that's not all that common. And so maybe that is leading to the algorithm treating you differently. I will also report that I noticed the algorithm taking chances on videos with me more, or what seems like it, a video with very few views. And I would imagine there is a profile for how much the audience clicks on videos because of their view count. Not at all. And therefore, it will recommend videos that, you know, the algorithm thinks are a good correlation with you, but it would normally take less of a risk on because many people think a video is questionable just because it has few views. And for even if they would otherwise have been interested in it, and they would have clicked on it if the views were hidden, but they're not by default. So that's also something to consider. Trying videos like that does seem to have had a, I think, positive effect on the algorithm. And, you know, creators that have a very small or starting up channel do often have worse equipment, like worse audio quality or whatever. But I think a lot of the time this actually benefits the video because it forces them not to rely on production quality, which doesn't actually improve the information in the video most of the time. So go figure. And it's interesting to see how actually my own example, Kleric's videos, often have kind of iffy audio and in the past had a lot of video issues too. And he does often use really interesting like editing or transition tricks in them, but it's noteworthy how the videos kind of are the information they are and are designed to be fun without that. Like before that was the case. That's now gotten better as this person has gotten more successful. But because they were kind of forced to do without it for a little bit, I think this affected their ability to make good information videos. I'm a person who is just kind of an anti-purist, and I don't think that quality is a good altar to sacrifice yourself at. I think information is more important. But a lot of people kind of get tempted by that. It feels like they can make the video objectively good, and this just doesn't really matter. That's also interesting, that videos that are of janky quality often end up being a good experience and can teach the algorithm not to recommend you rote things that are just, I don't know, it's just a video with a lot of views that looks good. But what is the point of that? So I don't know if that is having that effect, but I will pass these things on to you and you can try your luck with them. Yeah, we don't need to get into it here. That YouTuber is a frustration point for me because they often do a lot of things that make the video viewing experience worse for the layperson audience to manipulate how the audience interacts with the algorithm. And I feel they're a person who is making unusually large trade-offs in that direction. Things about the video that are quite frustrating for the person watching it because they manipulate the audience into not doing something that they don't want the audience to do. Like click off the video early or watch the video sped up or whatever. And like, okay, you can do this and you will probably bully people into stopping that. But it sucks for like good people that you would want to like your videos. And not for nothing are the audience that's actually going to consider supporting you. So I think that's bad, but it's a strategy that is rare, which is why it was originally on my radar. And to be fair, a lot of the videos have a gloriously unhinged quality to them. So I don't know. I'm not recommending this channel really, but I just thought I would share with you an example that I feel like has had an effect on my algorithm and yet also snowballed into a bunch of, I don't know, Zelda slop. Sorry. Not a terrible flavor of slop, as it were, but go figure. Sorry, Zelda, not you specifically. I'm talking about the game franchise. Take me out to dinner. Take her out to dinner. Anyway, sorry, Zelda. I was talking about the Legend of Zelda video game series. Cool, cool. Get your mind out of the gutter. Good crew parlay, a shorter one, not as many responses, but I think we can agree that just as with the algorithm, the quantity of the responses was second to the quality of those responses. They were very nice, so well done. Looking forward to the next one. Folks, this is a perk that is the lower tier on my Patreon. It's intended for people who don't want to pay for Parley but would like to just try it and participate. In particular, I purposefully have it as the $5 tier, and so it's the same as Twitch Prime or a tier 1 sub on Twitch. If you want to do that or already have done that, the largest number of people numerically that support me are at that tier. I thought it'd be nice to offer something for everyone, and 90+% of them do not use it. So if you want to, I just want you to know that you have it. If you just sync up your Discord with Twitch, or you decide to get that on Patreon, you sync up your Discord and Patreon, it should work automatically. If it doesn't, just let me know and I'll set it up. And thanks for supporting the show. I'll see you in the next one next month.